Good evening everybody, I hope that you're okay and that the stormy weather we've been having recently hasn't affected you too much. So we are going to be talking about the myth-busting idea that I presented to you earlier in the week. So thank you so much to everybody who contributed to that. I have absolutely loads of different myths that you've all said to me about covering. So we'll go through as many of them as we can. A fantastic one to start with. You have to be the alpha of your dog. Okay, so I hear this one a lot. So the alpha essentially means you have to be the one in charge of your dog, you have to be the boss. And this just really isn't true. This is a massive myth. So Dr. David Meck came up with the idea of the dominance theory, and I'm not going to go too much into that side of things because I'm planning on doing a whole video about that on its own. But essentially he came up with the theory, and he also came back later and said he was wrong, which is fantastic. So the dominance theory has been disproved. You don't have to be your dog's alpha. You know, it's a relationship. You are your dog's carer, you're your dog's parent, you're your dog's friend. You don't have to show them who's boss. That's just not what we need to do. You know, they want to be in your lives, and they're not trying to take over the world every given moment. The next one. You shouldn't walk your dog out on a lead for the first 12 months. Okay, so this is an interesting one. There is evidence that you shouldn't over-exercise your dogs when they're young. Their growth plates are still growing, they are still maturing, and you can do damage if you over-exercise at a young age. However, I really would not recommend you wait 12 months until you take your dog out on lead. At 12 months, they're pretty big and they're going to be strong on lead. If you can teach a really good loose lead walk in the puppy stage, your walks are going to be so enjoyable. Whereas if you wait until 12 months, they're going to be so strong and it's going to be difficult. So no, please do take your dogs out on walks after they've had their vaccinations, make sure they're safe. Just don't overdo it. That's all it is. Talk to your vet for advice. They'll be more than happy to give you advice on how long you should walk your dog for at what ages, but just be sensible about it. Don't take a young puppy on a 10-mile hike. They're just not going to cope. Do take them for a walk around the block and teach them lead skills from an early age. That's fantastic. It's not fair to medicate your dog herbally or other, so medically, to ease anxiety. Now, as a behaviourist, I see a lot of anxious dogs, and I do work with vets, and it's important that you do work with vets, to sometimes medicate to help take the edge off so that they can cope with their anxiety and learn to not be anxious with a behaviour modification plan. So absolutely, I would not just medicate and leave it there. I would always medicate and put a behaviour plan with it, and I would always work with a vet, absolutely, even if you are herbally doing it. Please talk to your vets. Please make sure that you're not giving them anything that you shouldn't. There are many different products out there. They're not all safe. I have got a workshop for essential oils coming up that are specifically for dogs and cats, the recipes we're using, and it is worth bearing in mind that not all herbal, even though it's natural, not all herbal products are safe for our pets. It could be how they're used, how they're put on, things like that. So do still talk to your vets. But as long as the welfare is maintained, and as long as the animal is working towards something, so using that behaviour plan, sometimes medication is needed to take the edge off. I'm awful at the dentist. I have a massive dentist phobia. So I get sedated for some of my treatments, and that allows me to not feel nervous in the waiting room anymore. Whereas before I wouldn't have even gone. I would have cancelled treatments and literally only gone if, my face was falling off. Now, I can go to the dentist, I can sit in the chair, I can do loads of things because I know that for stuff that's a little bit tricky for me, so extractions, fillings, implants, anything like that, I can be sedated and it takes the edge off and I can cope with that, and then next time I'm more willing to try things a bit further perhaps before I need to be sedated. So sometimes medication can just take off the edge enough that emotionally and mentally you and your animals can learn how to deal with difficult situations. But it has to be with a vet. So please don't just start medicating your animals willy-nilly. Flooding will cure anxious or aggressive behaviour. So, the first thing is, what is flooding? Flooding is essentially, for the long and short of it, when you put your animal over its thresholds, over its ability to cope for a prolonged period of time, in the hope that essentially they will just get used to it, they will figure out that nothing bad's happened, and they'll get over it. Unfortunately, flooding can be very, very dangerous. So it can cause a lot of physiological problems. Prolonged stress can cause massive issues physically, mentally, emotionally. And flooding has to be done very carefully. So I would only ever recommend you use flooding if you are a qualified experienced behaviourist, or if you're working with a qualified experienced behaviourist. And I personally wouldn't use it at all. So that's my personal thing. If I am terrified of spiders and you put me in a room of spiders that are just everywhere and you don't let me out, I'm not gonna realise nothing bad's happened after an hour of being stuck in there. I'm just gonna lose my mind and not be able to cope. And if we go over threshold and we can't cope, the learning brain shuts down and progress isn't made. So no, I would never use flooding to cure anxious or aggressive behaviours, and actually it can make it a lot worse because you're traumatised by the experience, and next time you're even more anxious, even more aggressive about what's going on, and it's just not a good place to be. You should let your dog meet every person and dog that it comes across. I see this quite a lot with people that have puppies or super over-friendly dogs, and unfortunately this can cause behaviour issues on its own. So absolutely, socialise your puppies, socialise your dogs, take them to different areas, let them meet dogs, let them meet people, but don't let them meet every single dog or every single person. Put them on a bit of a varied schedule. So today you are going to meet every third dog on your walk. What you're training your dog is sometimes we meet other dogs and sometimes we don't, and that is normal and that is fine. If you let them meet every single dog or every single person, sometimes they can expect to meet every single person and every single dog, and if they're not allowed to do that for whatever reason, maybe the dog's aggressive or the person doesn't want to be jumped all over, you can then get frustration behaviours where they've not been allowed to complete something they normally would. Dogs are wolves in a dog's body. I love this one. So, yes, a lot of dogs have wolf ancestors, absolutely. Looking at it from an evolutionary perspective, yes, dogs do come from wolves, but they don't just come from wolves. Some dog breeds come from other canine species, and that is worth bearing in mind. So, some come from more of the hunting dog, jackal ancestry. That's not a wolf. So that's the first thing. Secondly, dogs from an evolutionary ancestry point of view are so far removed now from wolves, it would be exactly the same as me comparing you directly to a chimpanzee, which I think you'd probably find quite insulting. If a dog has behavioural problems, it means the owners are not caring for it properly. Now this is quite an important one to talk about. A lot of the time I see over social media people saying that there's a dog next door that is barking or howling continuously, and instantly you'll get a feed of people saying contact the RSPCA, the dog's not being looked after properly, call the dog warden. Just because that dog is kicking off does not mean the owner doesn't love it, and it does not mean the owner doesn't care for it. Chances are the owner doesn't know anything's going on because they're not there. Okay, so that's when we're looking at separation related problems, and they only occur when the owner's not there. That's the point. So just because that's happening doesn't mean that the owner's not caring for it. And it's really important you remember that and keep an open mind. The best thing you can do is actually approach that owner, or if you don't want to approach them, write them a note saying, I'm not sure if you're aware, but your dog is really struggling when you're out, and then see where it goes from there. Okay? It does not mean that they've not cared for it. The same as people with aggressive dogs, it doesn't mean they've made that dog aggressive. It could be they were a rescue, it could be they've had bad experiences. That person is dealing with it the best they can. They're not bad people, and it's just so important to remember that. We need to be kind to each other, not to point the finger. Expensive behaviourists or trainers are better than cheaper ones. The price reflects the quality. No, is the short answer to that. So, in this day and age, price does not reflect quality, especially in behaviour and training worlds. Maybe in other worlds, but behaviour and training worlds are the ones that I'm in. So, just because somebody charges more than everyone else doesn't mean they are more highly qualified or experienced than everyone else. And that's really important. And just because somebody charges less than everybody else doesn't mean they're the worst one out there and that they have no experience and qualifications. You need to really look at the experience and qualifications of the people that you are employing to work with your animals rather than the price they are charging, because you just can't go by that anymore. You need to think about what you can realistically afford to spend on your animal, and then look at the behaviourists that fall into that category, look at their qualifications, look at their experience, look at whether they're recommended, look at who they're affiliated with, and use that to make your decision, not price. I love this one. Behaviourists or trainers have the best behaved pets. No, absolutely not. So, we are still people the same as anyone else, that's the first thing. Second thing, behaviourists and trainers generally work a lot with rescues and kennels. So we see a lot of dogs with behaviour problems, and to be honest, we're pretty well equipped to actually help those dogs. So you will find a lot of behaviourists and trainers with dogs who have a lot of behaviour problems, and that's because they were the right people to be working with those dogs. So it doesn't mean that just because you see a behaviourist getting yanked down the road by their dog, it doesn't mean they're not good at what they do. It means they're probably working with that animal for a reason. Animals instinctively know what a clicker or whistle means and how to respond. I see this a lot with my training clients. So I'll say, should we try clicker training? And they'll go, oh no, my dog didn't respond to that well last time, or my horse or my cat didn't. And I'll say, oh, okay, well, what happened? And they'll go, well, you know, we were clicking or we were whistling and they just didn't really respond. And the thing is, they don't know what it means. It's simple as that. You must teach your animal what the click sound means. So click always means a reward is coming. The whistle always means a reward is coming. You've got to teach them what they mean. They don't just know. And I don't think that's been really taught as well as it should have been, perhaps by the companies selling these products. You really do have to teach your animal what the click means or what the whistle means. Otherwise you can be blowing that whistle to your heart's content and the animal's going. So make sure you do train it.